I watched my daughter laugh in the courtroom. Actually laugh. Her attorney had just finished explaining to Judge Callahan why I needed a conservator, why I couldn't be trusted with my own money anymore, why Madison needed legal authority to make all my decisions for me. And she laughed. Not loud, but I heard it. That small, confident sound that said she'd already won. I'm Claire Ashford. I'm 58 years old. I live in Portland. And 3 hours ago, my only child tried to have me declared mentally incompetent so she could steal $2.3 million from me. The thing is, she almost got away with it. Madison stood up there in her expensive suit, crying on cue, telling the judge how worried she was about me, how I forgot to pay bills, how I repeated myself, how I couldn't remember what day it was. She had witnesses lined up. Our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who I'd helped through her husband's funeral 6 months ago, testified that I seemed confused and forgetful. Madison's husband, Derek, said I was withdrawing from the family, showing signs of cognitive decline. Even a doctor I'd seen once for a flu shot suggested that women my age often experience mental deterioration. And Madison sat there at her table, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, looking like the devoted daughter trying to save her declining mother from herself. Except I'm not declining. I'm not confused. My mind is sharper than it's ever been. What I am is a woman who found forged checks in her daughter's guest room 2 years ago. Checks with my signature, practiced over and over on a notepad until Madison got it just right. What I am is a mother who's been watching her daughter steal from her for 3 years, taking money from my purse, charging things to my credit cards, forging my name on documents, all while I played dumb and pretended not to notice, because I was building a case. And today was the day it all came out. Judge Callahan leaned back in his chair after Madison's attorney finished presenting their evidence. He looked tired. He'd probably seen 100 cases like this. He probably thought he was looking at another sad situation of a confused elderly woman and a concerned daughter trying to do the right thing. Then my attorney Patricia stood up. Your Honor, we'd like to submit Mrs. Ashford's medical records for review. I watched Madison's smile falter just slightly. Her attorney Mitchell glanced at his notes, confused. Patricia handed over 3 years of documentation. Neuropsychological testing showing I had 0 cognitive impairment. Statements from my financial advisor explaining that every single decision I'd made with my money was sound and deliberate. Medical records from my actual doctor, not the one who had seen me for 10 minutes, confirming I was in excellent mental health. Madison's face was losing color. Mitchell was flipping through papers frantically. Judge Callahan was reading carefully, his expression shifting from tired patience to sharp attention. Ms. Moreno, the judge said slowly, these records indicate Mrs. Ashford is completely competent. Yes, Your Honor, she is. Then why are we here? Patricia looked directly at Madison. Because Ms. Ashford Hunt has been committing financial elder abuse against her mother for the past 3 years. She's forged checks, made unauthorized charges, and is now attempting to use the legal system to gain control of her mother's assets. We have documentation of all of it. The courtroom went dead silent. Mitchell jumped up. Your Honor, this is completely unfounded. We have no knowledge of any... Did you forge your mother's signature, Miss Ashford Hunt? Judge Callahan asked directly. Madison's mouth opened and closed. I was helping her. She couldn't manage... Did you have her authorization? She wasn't capable of giving authorization. But she was capable. According to these medical records, she's been capable this entire time. The judge's voice was cold now. So you took it upon yourself to access her accounts without permission, sign her name to documents, and are now trying to have her declared incompetent so you can legally take control of her finances. It's not like that, Madison said, but her voice was shaking. The money is going to be mine eventually anyway. I'm her only child. I'm entitled to. Entitled? I said it quietly, but everyone heard me. It was the first word I'd spoken in the courtroom. Madison turned to look at me, and for a second I saw panic in her eyes. Real, genuine panic. Because she was starting to realize that I'd known, that I'd been 3 steps ahead of her this entire time. "Your Honor," Patricia said, "there's one more thing the court should know. 3 years ago, shortly after Mrs. Ashford discovered her daughter's financial misconduct, she executed an irrevocable trust. She transferred all of her assets, the house, the investment accounts, the rental properties, everything, into a charitable trust benefiting St. Vincent de Paul Society and Portland Rescue Mission. I watched the information hit Madison like a physical blow. "Wait," she whispered. "What?" "Mrs. Ashford retained lifetime use of her home," Patricia continued. "But upon her death, all assets transfer to charity. There is nothing in her name anymore, nothing to conserve. Ms. Ashford Hunt has no legal standing, and this petition is without merit." Madison grabbed the trust documents from Mitchell's hands. Her face went from white to red as she read. Her hands were shaking so badly the papers rustled. "You gave it all away?" Her voice was rising. "Everything. You gave away my inheritance?" "It wasn't your inheritance," Judge Callahan said sharply. "It was your mother's property, and she had every right to dispose of it as she saw fit." "But I'm her daughter. That money was supposed to be mine. She promised." "This petition is dismissed," the judge said, cutting her off. "Mrs. Ashford is clearly of sound mind and has made legal decisions regarding her property. Furthermore, the allegations of financial abuse raised today are extremely serious. Ms. Ashford Hunt, you should consider yourself fortunate that your mother hasn't pressed criminal charges for forgery and elder financial abuse." That's when Madison looked at me with complete betrayal in her eyes. "Mom, please, we can fix this. I'll get help, I stood up, picked up my folder, and I walked toward the courtroom doors without saying a word. Behind me, I heard Madison's voice getting louder, more desperate. Mom, wait. You can't do this to me, please." But I kept walking. Patricia beside me, my footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Behind us, Madison was crying, maybe screaming. I couldn't tell anymore. Derek was trying to calm her down. Mitchell was probably wondering how his easy conservatorship case had turned into a disaster. I pushed through the courthouse doors and into the February rain. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. Because I'd just done something I never thought I'd do. I'd chosen to save myself instead of my daughter. For 3 years, I'd known Madison was stealing from me. For 3 years, I'd watched her practice my signature, forge my checks, plan to take everything I owned. And for 3 years, I'd quietly moved every single asset beyond her reach, while she thought she was getting away with it. I gave $2.3 million to charity, rather than let my daughter have it. I let her file for conservatorship, let her bring witnesses to lie about me, let her think she'd won, just so I could watch her face when she realized I'd known all along, when she realized she'd get nothing. The thing is, I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because Madison needed to learn that some things can't be stolen, that you can't treat your mother like an ATM and still claim to love her, that there are consequences to greed. But standing there in the rain outside the courthouse, listening to my daughter scream my name through the doors behind me, I wondered if I'd just destroyed the only family I had left, if saving myself meant losing her forever. Patricia touched my arm. "You did the right thing, Claire. But right doesn't always feel good. Right sometimes feels like your heart is being ripped out of your chest while your daughter begs you to come back, to forgive her, to give her one more chance she doesn't deserve." I got in Patricia's car, and we drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw Madison burst through the courthouse doors, still crying, looking around frantically for me. But I was already gone. I spent 3 years planning this moment, 3 years gathering evidence, moving money, building an ironclad case. 3 years knowing that eventually Madison would make her move, and I'd have to stop her. What I didn't plan for was how it would feel. The look on her face when Judge Callahan read the trust documents. The sound of her voice breaking when she realized what I'd done. The way she dropped to her knees in that courthouse hallway and begged me not to leave. I didn't plan for the guilt, the wondering if I'd been too cruel, too calculated. The question that's been eating at me ever since I walked out those doors. When does protecting yourself become punishing someone else? Madison tried to steal from me. She lied to a judge. She attempted to have me declared mentally incompetent so she could control my money. She deserved what happened today. But she's still my daughter, and I just gave away everything she thought would be hers someday. I just let her publicly humiliate herself in a courtroom. I just walked away while she cried my name. The worst part? I'd do it again. Because the alternative was letting her win. Letting her take my house, my money, my independence. Letting her put me in a nursing home somewhere while she spent David's life insurance and my retirement and every dollar we'd worked for. I couldn't do that, so I did this instead. And now I'm sitting in my house on Hawthorne Boulevard, the house David and I bought 30 years ago, the house Madison grew up in, and I'm wondering what happens next. She knows I gave everything away. She knows I've known about her stealing for years. She knows I let her walk into that courtroom thinking she'd win, just so I could watch her lose. What does a mother and daughter do after that? How do you come back from that level of betrayal on both sides? My phone is ringing. It's Madison. She's called 16 times since we left the courthouse 2 hours ago. I haven't answered because I don't know what to say to her. I don't know if I can forgive her for trying to steal from me, and I don't know if she can forgive me for giving away what she wanted. All I know is that I'm free now, free from worrying about whether my daughter is forging my signature, free from the fear that I'll end up in a home against my will, free from being a victim. But freedom came at a price, and I'm not sure yet if it was worth paying. The rain is coming down harder now. The roses David planted need pruning. The house needs cleaning. My life needs living. And somewhere in Portland, my daughter is trying to understand how the mother she thought she could manipulate just destroyed every plan she'd made. I should feel victorious. I should feel vindicated. Instead, I just feel tired. And I'm wondering, when you have to protect yourself from your own child, who really wins? I woke up that Tuesday morning to the sound of rain against my bedroom window, the kind of persistent Oregon drizzle that turns the world soft and gray. The digital clock on my nightstand read 6:47 a.m., which meant I'd been awake for at least 20 minutes, just lying there, staring at the ceiling and listening to the house settle around me. The Victorian creaks in predictable places now. The third stair from the top, the hallway floorboard near the bathroom, the back door when the wind picks up. David used to say the house was talking to us, telling us its secrets. I used to laugh at that. Now I find myself listening. I pushed back the quilt, the one my mother made before she died, all blues and creams in a wedding ring pattern, and sat up slowly. My knees hurt. They always hurt in the morning now. A dull ache that reminds me I'm 58 and not 28. Though sometimes I still feel like that young woman who moved into this house with a baby on her hip and dreams big enough to fill every room. I walked to the window and pulled back the lace curtain. Hawthorne Boulevard was already awake. A jogger in a bright yellow jacket splashing through puddles. A Tri-Met bus hissing to a stop at the corner. The lights on at Bipartisan Cafe across the street, where they'd be pulling the first pies from the oven. I loved this neighborhood. Loved it with the kind of fierce loyalty you develop after 3 decades of watching it change and grow around you. When David and I first moved here in 1993, Hawthorne was scruffier, more eclectic. Now it was lined with trendy coffee shops and vintage boutiques, but it still had soul. Our house, a 3-story Queen Anne with a turret and gingerbread trim, stood out like a dowager at a hipster party, dignified and slightly out of place. David had spent 10 years restoring it, every weekend bent over stripped wood or up on a ladder with paint samples. Madison used to hand him tools when she was little, her small fingers gripping screwdrivers like they were treasures. Madison, my daughter. The reason I'd barely slept last night. I turned away from the window and headed downstairs, my hand trailing along the mahogany banister David had refinished twice. The house smelled like old wood and lavender. I kept sachets in the linen closet, a habit from my own mother. In the kitchen, I started the coffee maker, an ancient Mr. Coffee that Madison had tried to replace with some fancy espresso machine last Christmas. "Mom, you need to upgrade," she'd said, exasperated. But I liked the familiar gurgle of the old machine, the way it took its time. Not everything needs to be faster. While the coffee brewed, I stood at the sink and looked out at the backyard. The roses needed pruning. February was the time to cut them back, prepare them for spring. David had planted those roses the year Madison was born. Red ones for passion, pink for gratitude, white for remembrance. He'd been sentimental that way, always finding meaning in flowers and sunsets, and the way light fell through windows. I missed that about him. Missed the way he'd pull me into a dance in the kitchen for no reason, or leave notes in my coat pockets with terrible puns. He'd been gone 4 years now, a heart attack while mowing the lawn on a Sunday afternoon, and I still sometimes set 2 coffee mugs on the counter before remembering I only need 1. The phone rang at exactly 7:30. I knew who it was before I picked it up. "Good morning, Mom." Madison's voice was bright, cheerful, the voice she used when she wanted something. I'd learned to recognize it years ago. "Morning, honey," I said, pouring my coffee. "You're up early." "I'm always up early. You know that." A pause. "I was thinking I'd stop by today. Maybe around 10? We could have tea. I need to talk to you about something." My hand tightened on the phone. "What about?" "Oh, just some paperwork stuff. Nothing urgent. But it would be good to go over it together." Her tone was casual, but I heard the edge underneath. Madison had been stopping by a lot lately, always with paperwork, always with concerns about my bills or my investments, or whether I was staying on top of things. "I have an appointment at 10, I lied. "How about tomorrow?" A beat of silence. "An appointment? With who?" "The dentist." Another lie. I'd gotten good at them lately, little white shields to keep her at arm's length. "Oh, okay." She sounded disappointed. "Tomorrow then." "But Mom, we really do need to talk. There are some things that can't wait much longer." After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen for a long time, holding my coffee mug and feeling the warmth seep into my palms. The rain had picked up outside, drumming harder against the windows. I thought about Madison, really thought about her. Not just the memory of the daughter I'd raised, but the woman she'd become. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost her. Or maybe she'd lost herself. I wasn't sure which was worse. The first time I noticed something was wrong was about 3 years ago. Madison had stopped by. She was doing that more often then, after David died. And we'd had lunch together at my kitchen table. Soup and sandwiches. Nothing fancy. She'd been distracted checking her phone constantly. And when she went to the bathroom, her purse had fallen off the chair. Things spilled out. Lipstick, keys, receipts, and a notepad. I picked it up without thinking, just trying to gather her things. That's when I saw it. My signature. Written over and over and over on the page. Practiced in different pens, different pressures. Claire Ashford. Claire Ashford. C. Ashford. At least 30 times. My stomach had dropped. I'd stared at that notepad for what felt like hours, but was probably only a seconds, trying to find an innocent explanation. Maybe she was practicing for a surprise party invitation. Maybe she needed to sign something on my behalf for a legitimate reason. But I knew, deep down, In that place where mothers know things about their children, even when they don't want to. I knew. I'd put the notepad back in her purse and said nothing. When Madison came back from the bathroom, I smiled and asked if she wanted more coffee. She'd said no, she had to get back to work. After she left, I'd sat at that table for an hour, just staring at my hands. These hands that had held her when she was born, wiped her tears, helped her with homework, applauded at her high school graduation. These hands that she was learning to forge. Over the next few months, I started paying closer attention. $20 missing from my wallet. A charge on my credit card for a restaurant I'd never been to. Madison's increasing interest in my finances. Asking about the house value. About David's life insurance. About my retirement accounts. She'd always been interested in money, even as a teenager. She'd wanted the designer clothes, the expensive car for her 16th birthday, the private college. And David and I had given it to her, working extra hours, taking out loans, because that's what parents do. We wanted her to have everything we didn't, but apparently everything wasn't enough. I finished my coffee and rinsed the mug, watching the brown liquid swirl down the drain. Outside, the sky was growing lighter, though the rain showed no signs of stopping. I needed to get dressed. I actually did have an appointment today, though not with a dentist. I was meeting with Patricia Moreno, the estate attorney I'd hired 6 months ago. Patricia had helped me do something I never imagined I'd do. Put all my assets somewhere Madison could never reach them. Upstairs, I chose my clothes carefully. Gray slacks, a cream sweater, my Goodwill coat. I wanted to look competent, in control, not like the confused old woman Madison was probably describing to her friends. My mom's getting forgetful, I could imagine her saying over wine at some trendy Pearl District bar. I'm worried about her. She might need help managing her affairs. The thing is, I wasn't forgetful. My mind was as sharp as it had ever been. I could tell you every bill that was due, every balance in every account, every detail of the estate plan David and I had created 20 years ago. But Madison didn't know that. Madison saw what she wanted to see. An aging mother alone in a big house, vulnerable and confused. Someone who needed saving. Someone whose money needed protecting. Before I left, I walked through the house one more time, touching familiar things. The grandfather clock in the hallway that David had inherited from his father. The pressed glass windows in the dining room that threw rainbow patterns on the wall when the sun came out. The built-in bookshelf in the living room, still full of the books David and I had collected. Mysteries and histories and dog-eared paperbacks we'd read on camping trips. This house held 30 years of our life. It held Madison's childhood, her first steps on that hardwood floor, her height marks on the doorframe between the kitchen and the dining room, the dent in the wall where she'd thrown a toy in a tantrum when she was 4. It held everything, and I decided very deliberately to give it all away. The meeting with Patricia was at 9:30 at her office downtown, a modern building near the courthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. Patricia was about my age, with short silver hair and reading glasses that hung on a chain around her neck. She'd come highly recommended by my financial advisor, Tom Chen, who I'd worked with for 15 years. "You need someone who understands elder law," Tom had said when I first came to him with my concerns about Madison. "And you need someone who won't judge you for what you're about to do." Patricia didn't judge. She listened. And then she helped me create an irrevocable trust that would protect everything I owned from the person who wanted it most. "Claire!" Patricia stood when I entered her office, shaking my hand firmly. "Right on time. Coffee? Please." I settled into the chair across from her desk, a modern thing made of glass and chrome that felt very different from the old wooden furniture in my house. Patricia poured coffee from a French press. She was one of those people who took coffee seriously, and handed me a mug. "So," she said, sitting down and pulling a folder toward her. "We're less than a week away. How are you feeling?" "Terrified," I admitted. "And certain," Is that possible? Absolutely. She opened the folder, revealing the documents we'd spent months preparing. Let me walk you through what's going to happen one more time. Next Tuesday, February 14th. Valentine's Day, I interrupted with a bitter laugh. The irony isn't lost on me. Patricia smiled sympathetically. Next Tuesday, you'll appear before Judge Callahan for the conservatorship hearing that Madison filed. Her petition claims you're mentally incompetent and unable to manage your affairs. She's requesting full conservatorship, which would give her control over all your financial and personal decisions, including the power to put me in a nursing home. Yes, Patricia didn't sugarcoat it. But here's what Madison doesn't know. 3 years ago, following your initial consultation with me, you underwent comprehensive cognitive testing with Dr. Sarah Lindstrom, a neuropsychologist. Those tests showed you to be completely sound of mind. No dementia, no cognitive decline. Nothing. We have those records. I nodded. I remembered those tests. Hours of questions and puzzles and memory exercises. Dr. Lindstrom had been kind but thorough. Your mind is fine, Claire, she'd told me. Better than fine. You're sharp as a tack. Patricia continued. Additionally, 3 years ago, you executed an irrevocable trust agreement, transferring all of your real property and financial assets into the St. Vincent de Paul Charitable Trust. You retained a lifetime estate in your home, meaning you can live there until you die. But upon your death, the property transfers to St. Vincent de Paul Society and Portland Rescue Mission. The same with your investment accounts, your rental property, everything. It's all gone, legally speaking. It's no longer yours to give, and therefore, there's nothing for Madison to conserve. And she has no idea. None. We've kept everything sealed. The trust is a matter of public record, but you have to know to look for it. Madison's attorney clearly didn't do his due diligence. Patricia's eyes were steady on mine. Claire, I have to ask you one more time. Are you absolutely sure about this? Because once we reveal this in court, there's no going back. Your relationship with Madison will never be the same. I set down my coffee mug. My hands were shaking slightly, but my voice was steady. Patricia, my relationship with Madison ended the day I found that notepad with my forged signature. The person I raised, the daughter I loved. She's gone. I don't know who this woman is, but she's not my child. Not anymore. Okay. Patricia closed the folder. Then we're ready. Judge Callahan will review the petition, hear Madison's evidence, whatever witnesses she's rounded up, whatever claims she's making, and then he'll hear from us. We'll present your medical records, your cognitive tests, and most importantly, the trust documents. The petition will be dismissed because there's nothing to conserve. Madison will have no claim, no standing, nothing. She's going to hate me. Probably. Patricia's voice was gentle. But Claire, she was already stealing from you. The forged checks, the credit card fraud. Those are crimes. You could have had her prosecuted. Instead, you're protecting yourself in a way that also protects her from legal consequences. That's more grace than most people would show. Grace. That word again. Father Murphy had used it too, when I'd gone to see him at St. Philip Neri. I hadn't been to Mass in years, not since David died, really. But I'd needed to talk to someone who understood about forgiveness and hard choices. Father Murphy was in his 70s with white hair and hands that shook slightly when he poured tea. We'd sat in his office, and I told him everything. I feel like I'm being cruel, I'd said. Like I'm punishing her. Are you trying to hurt her, Claire? He'd asked. No, I'm trying to save myself. Then it's not cruelty. It's boundary setting. It's self-preservation. He'd leaned forward, his eyes kind. You know, we Catholics talk a lot about forgiveness. Turn the other cheek, love your enemies, all of that. But sometimes we forget that forgiveness doesn't mean becoming someone's doormat. You can forgive Madison for what she's done, and still protect yourself from her doing it again. That's not unchristian. That's wisdom. But the Bible says to honor your mother and father. Doesn't that go both ways? Aren't I supposed to honor my child? Father Murphy had smiled. The Bible also says not to steal and not to bear false witness. Madison is breaking commandments too, Claire. You're just refusing to enable her. Now, sitting in Patricia's office with the rain streaking down the windows and the city spread out below us, like a map of possible futures, I felt that same mixture of conviction and grief. I was doing the right thing. I knew I was, but it still hurt like hell. Thank you, I said to Patricia, for everything, for not thinking I'm crazy or vindictive. You're neither of those things. She stood and walked around the desk, putting a hand on my shoulder. You're a mother who's been backed into an impossible corner. You're doing what you need to do to survive. I left her office at 10:30 and walked through downtown Portland in the rain. I didn't have an umbrella, but I didn't care. The cold water felt cleansing somehow, washing away the pretense of normalcy I'd been maintaining for 3 years. Ever since I found that notepad, I'd been playing a role. The oblivious mother, the trusting parent, the easy mark. But underneath, I'd been building a fortress, moving money, filing documents, gathering evidence, preparing for the moment when Madison would finally make her move. And now that moment was almost here. I stopped at Powell's Books, the massive independent bookstore that took up an entire city block. I loved this place. Had been coming here since Madison was a baby, pushing her stroller through the aisles while she babbled at the colorful spines. Today I wandered up to the Orange Room, the fiction section, and pulled random books from the shelves. I wasn't really reading them, just touching them, feeling their weight and texture. Solid, real, evidence that some things endure. By the time I caught the bus back to Hawthorne, it was afternoon, and the rain had softened to mist. When I got home, there was a car in my driveway, Madison's silver Lexus, the one Derek had bought her for their 5th anniversary. My heart sank. She'd come anyway, despite my dentist appointment excuse. She was waiting on the porch, and she didn't look happy. Mom. She stood up as I approached, her arms crossed. The dentist, huh? I told you I had an appointment. At a law office downtown? Her eyes were hard. Mrs. Patterson saw you leaving this morning. She mentioned you were all dressed up, so I did some checking. Called your dentist. They said you don't have an appointment scheduled. I unlocked the front door without answering, and Madison followed me inside. In the hallway, with the grandfather clock ticking between us like a countdown, we faced each other. What's going on, Mom? Madison's voice had lost its cheerful edge. Now she just sounded angry. Why are you seeing lawyers? What are you planning? I could ask you the same question, I said quietly. Why have you been forging my signature, Madison? The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? I found the notepad 3 years ago, the one where you practiced writing my name over and over. I watched her carefully, and I found the forged checks, the ones you left in the guest room box. For a moment, she just stared at me. Then she laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. Mom, you're confused. You're imagining things. That's exactly why we need to talk about your care. I'm not confused. My voice was steady, stronger than I expected. I know exactly what you've been doing, and I know why. Why what? Why I'm trying to help you. Why I'm worried about you living alone in this big house, making decisions you can't handle anymore. She stepped closer. Mom, you need help, and I'm the only family you have left. If you wanted to help me, you wouldn't be stealing from me. I haven't stolen anything. Her voice rose, echoing in the high-ceilinged hallway. I've been trying to make sure you're taken care of, that you don't lose everything, because you can't manage anymore. Then why did you file for conservatorship? Silence. Madison's face went through several expressions: surprise, confusion, and then something harder. Calculation. How did you know about that? She asked slowly. I was served the papers last week by a process server at my front door. I held her gaze. You're trying to have me declared incompetent so you can control my assets. But the thing is, Madison, I'm not incompetent. I'm perfectly fine. And next Tuesday, I'm going to prove it. Madison's jaw tightened. You don't understand what you're saying. The lawyer explained everything to me. This is standard procedure when someone is showing signs of cognitive decline. I don't have cognitive decline. You forget things. Like what? Like bills. You didn't pay the electric bill last month. Yes, I did. I paid it online on the 15th. Would you like to see the confirmation email? She faltered. You don't eat properly. Your refrigerator is always empty. I'm one person. I don't need much. And I have groceries delivered from Fred Meyer every week. I paused. Madison, I know what you're doing. And I know why. But it's not going to work. What's that supposed to mean? It means you need to leave. Now. We stood there in the dim hallway, mother and daughter, separated by a gulf that felt wider than the room. Finally, Madison grabbed her purse from the hall table. You're making a mistake, she said, her voice cold. I'm trying to protect you from yourself. No, I said. You're trying to protect my money from me. There's a difference. After she left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the pressed glass windows, I stood in the hallway for a long time. The house settled around me, creaking and sighing. Upstairs, I could hear the heating system kick on. Outside, a car passed, its tires hissing on wet pavement. I walked into the living room and sat in David's chair, the old leather recliner he'd loved. It still smelled faintly of him, aftershave and coffee and something indefinably David. I missed him so much in that moment I could barely breathe. He would have known what to do. He would have talked to Madison, made her understand, fixed this somehow. But David wasn't here. I was alone with this choice, this terrible, necessary choice. That night I made myself dinner, just soup and bread, and ate it at the kitchen table while reading a mystery novel. I went through the motions of my evening routine, washed the dishes, locked the doors, set the coffee maker for morning. But my mind was elsewhere, already in that courtroom, already hearing Judge Callahan's words, already seeing the look on Madison's face when she realized what I'd done. Before bed, I walked through the house one more time, touching things, the mantel where our family photos used to be. I'd taken them down months ago, unable to look at Madison's smiling childhood face, the window seat in the turret where I used to read to her before bed, the height marks on the doorframe, little pencil lines with dates next to them. Madison, age 3, Madison, age 5, Madison, age 7. I pressed my hand against the highest mark, the one from her 18th birthday, and I let myself cry. Not for who Madison was now, but for who she used to be. For the little girl who'd bring me dandelions from the yard and call them roses. For the teenager who'd sat with me through David's funeral, holding my hand so tight I thought my bones would break. For all the versions of my daughter that I'd loved and lost somewhere along the way. Tomorrow was Monday. The day after tomorrow was the hearing. 5 days from now, this would all be over. Madison would know the truth. She'd know that I'd chosen strangers. The homeless people served by Portland Rescue Mission. The families helped by St. Vincent de Paul. Over her. She'd know that I'd given away everything rather than let her take it. And maybe someday, she'd understand why. Maybe she'd realize that the greatest gift I could give her wasn't money. It was refusing to let her become someone who would steal from her own mother. It was protecting her from her worst self, even if she hated me for it. Or maybe she'd just hate me. Maybe that's all I'd have left. Her anger, her resentment, the look on her face in that courtroom when the judge said the words that would change everything. I turned off the lights and climbed the stairs to bed. In the dark, the house seemed to hold its breath, waiting. The rain had stopped, and through my bedroom window I could see stars, rare for Portland in February. I watched them for a while, those distant points of light, and I thought about grace and boundaries and the space between love and enabling. In 3 days, I would walk into that courtroom and destroy my daughter's plans. I would save myself, and I would have to live with what that cost. But tonight, in this house full of memories and ghosts, and the echo of a life I'd built with intention and care, I made peace with my choice. Madison had forced my hand, and now she was about to learn what it felt like to lose something you thought was already yours. The Victorian creaked around me, settling into the night. Outside, Portland slept under clearing skies, and I lay in the darkness, counting down the hours until everything changed. The morning of February 14th arrived cold and bright, the kind of winter day in Portland where the sky is so blue, it almost hurts to look at. I woke at 5 a.m., unable to sleep anymore, and lay in bed watching the light change from black to gray to that pale morning gold that filters through lace curtains. My stomach was tight with nerves, but my mind was clear. Today was the day. I dressed carefully in the clothes I'd laid out the night before. A dark blue dress with a modest neckline, pearl earrings David had given me for our 20th anniversary, low heels that wouldn't slip on the courthouse steps. I wanted to look dignified, competent, like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. In the mirror, I saw a 58-year-old woman with gray-streaked brown hair pulled back in a neat bun, lines around her eyes and mouth that spoke of years of smiling, of crying, of living. I looked like someone's mother, someone's grandmother, potentially, though Madison had made it clear years ago that children weren't in her plans. I looked like someone worth listening to. Downstairs, I couldn't eat. I made coffee and toast, but only managed a few bites before my stomach rebelled. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table and reviewed the folder Patricia had given me. Copies of all the documents we'd be presenting today. The trust agreement, the cognitive tests, the timeline of Madison's financial misconduct that Tom Chen had helped me compile. Bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals, credit card charges I'd never made, the forged checks, everything documented, dated, impossible to deny. At 8:15, Patricia's car pulled up outside. I grabbed my coat and the folder and locked the front door, wondering if this would be the last time I left my house as simply Claire Ashford, mother of Madison. When I came back, I would be something else, something harder. The drive downtown was quiet. Patricia seemed to sense I didn't want to talk, and I was grateful. We parked in the courthouse garage and took the elevator up to the 4th floor, where family court proceedings were held. The hallways were already busy. Lawyers in suits pulling wheeled briefcases, families clustered on benches outside courtroom doors, the occasional crying child being hushed by a worried parent. The building smelled like floor wax and old coffee, and the particular anxiety that clings to places where life-changing decisions are made. Judge Callahan's courtroom was at the end of the hall. Patricia checked us in with the clerk, and we took seats at the respondents' table, the left side of the courtroom, opposite from where Madison would sit. I set my folder down carefully and folded my hands, willing them to stop shaking. At 8:45, Madison arrived. I heard her before I saw her. The sharp click of expensive heels on the marble floor outside, the confident tone of her voice as she spoke to someone. Then she walked through the courtroom doors, and I felt something in my chest constrict. She looked beautiful. She'd always been beautiful, with David's dark hair and blue eyes, my high cheekbones, a combination that turned heads. Today she wore a black pantsuit with a silk blouse underneath, her hair in a sleek ponytail, minimal makeup. She looked professional, concerned, like the devoted daughter everyone would expect her to be. Behind her came Derek, her husband, tall and bland in his gray suit, and then a younger man I assumed was her lawyer, Mitchell something, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Madison's eyes found mine across the room. For a moment, we just looked at each other. I tried to read her expression. Was there any doubt there? Any hesitation? But all I saw was determination. She thought she was saving me. Or maybe she'd convinced herself that's what this was. It's easier to do terrible things when you believe you're doing them for someone's own good. She didn't smile, didn't wave, just turned away and took her seat at the petitioner's table, leaning close to whisper something to her lawyer. Derek sat behind them in the gallery, looking uncomfortable. He'd always been uncomfortable around conflict. I wondered what Madison had told him. Probably some version of the truth that painted her as the hero, and me as the victim, too confused to know what was best for myself. At 9 o'clock sharp, the bailiff called the court to order. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patrick Callahan. We stood as Judge Callahan entered through the side door, a tall man in his mid-60s with silver hair and the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen every variation of human behavior and wasn't impressed by any of it. He settled into his chair, adjusted his glasses, and opened the file in front of him. "Please be seated." His voice was deep, authoritative. "We're here today on the matter of Madison Ashford Hunt versus Claire Ashford. Case number FC 2025-047, a petition for conservatorship. Ms. Hunt, you're represented by Mr. Mitchell Barnes. Mrs. Ashford, you're represented by Ms. Patricia Moreno, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Patricia said. "Yes, Your Honor," Mitchell echoed, standing briefly. Judge Callahan glanced down at his papers. "Mr. Barnes, this is your petition. Please proceed." Mitchell stood, buttoning his suit jacket. He looked fresh out of law school, earnest and overprepared. "Thank you, Your Honor. We're here today because my client, Madison Ashford Hunt, is deeply concerned about her mother's deteriorating mental capacity. Mrs. Claire Ashford is 58 years old, widowed, living alone in a large home, and showing clear signs of cognitive decline. She forgets to pay bills. She repeats herself. She becomes confused about dates and appointments. She's unable to manage her significant financial assets without putting them at risk. I sat very still, my hands folded on the table. Every word was a lie, and he delivered them with such confidence. "Ms. Ashford Hunt has tried to help her mother voluntarily," Mitchell continued. "But Mrs. Ashford refuses assistance. She becomes angry and defensive when her daughter expresses concern. Given the substantial estate involved, approximately $2.3 million, it is imperative that the court appoint a conservator to protect Mrs. Ashford's interests before she dissipates her assets through confusion or becomes vulnerable to exploitation." He made it sound so reasonable, so necessary. I glanced at Madison and saw her nodding along, her expression sorrowful and concerned. She'd rehearsed this. Maybe she'd even convinced herself it was true. "Your Honor," Mitchell said, "I'd like to call our first witness, Mrs. Ashford's neighbor, Mrs. Eleanor Patterson." "Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor of 15 years, the woman whose husband I'd helped bury 6 months ago, sitting with her through his final days, bringing her casseroles and comfort." I watched her walk to the witness stand, a small woman in her 70s with white curls and a nervous expression. She wouldn't meet my eyes. After she was sworn in, Mitchell approached her with a gentle smile. "Mrs. Patterson, how long have you known Claire Ashford?" "About 15 years. We're neighbors on Hawthorne." Her voice was soft, apologetic. "And have you noticed any changes in Mrs. Ashford's behavior recently?" Mrs. Patterson twisted her hands in her lap. "Well, she does seem more forgetful. Last month she asked me what day it was twice in one conversation. And sometimes I see her wandering the yard at odd hours, like she's looking for something but can't remember what." I closed my eyes briefly. I had asked her what day it was twice, because we'd been talking about scheduling a lunch date, and I was trying to coordinate with my calendar, and I'd been in the yard at odd hours because I couldn't sleep, walking among David's roses in the moonlight, trying to make peace with what I was about to do. But context didn't matter here, only the story being told. Have you ever been concerned for her safety? Mitchell asked. Sometimes. The house is so big for one person. All those stairs. Mrs. Patterson finally looked at me, and I saw genuine worry in her eyes. She actually believed she was helping. I just think someone should be looking after her. Patricia didn't cross-examine. We'd discussed this. We weren't here to prove I was perfect or that I never had a forgetful moment. We were here to prove I was legally competent and that my assets weren't available to be conserved. Mrs. Patterson was excused, still not meeting my eyes as she left the courtroom. Next came Derek, Madison's husband. He took the stand, looking distinctly uncomfortable, tugging at his tie. "Mr. Hunt," Mitchell said, "you've known your mother-in-law for how long?" "About 8 years, since Madison and I got married." "And have you observed any concerning behavior?" Derek glanced at Madison. "She seems less sharp than she used to be. Gets confused sometimes. Madison has to remind her about family events, and she's become more withdrawn since David died." "Withdrawn how?" "She doesn't come to family dinners anymore. Doesn't return calls as quickly. Madison worries that she's isolating herself, which can be a sign of, cognitive issues." I wanted to laugh. I'd stopped going to their dinner parties because Madison spent every visit interrogating me about my finances. I didn't return calls quickly because I was avoiding her increasingly aggressive attempts to help me with my paperwork. But again, context was everything, and they were building a narrative that served their purposes. Patricia stood for cross-examination. "Mr. Hunt, you're not a medical professional, correct?" "No." "You're not qualified to diagnose cognitive impairment?" "No, but..." "And isn't it true that your wife stands to inherit a substantial sum if this conservatorship is granted, and Mrs. Ashford later passes away?" Derek's face flushed. "That's not what this is about. We're concerned..." "Just answer the question. You and your wife would benefit financially from this arrangement." A pause. "Eventually, yes. But that's not why..." "Thank you, Mr. Hunt. No further questions." Mitchell called 2 more witnesses. A woman named Vanessa, who claimed to be Madison's friend, though I'd never met her, and a doctor who'd seen me once for a flu shot and testified that patients Mrs. Ashford's age often experience cognitive decline. Patricia objected, and Judge Callahan sustained it, striking the testimony as speculative. Then it was Madison's turn. She walked to the witness stand with her head high, and something about watching her swear to tell the truth made my heart hurt. Once upon a time, I'd believed she always would. That honesty was something I'd taught her, something woven into who she was. But people change, or maybe they just reveal who they always were underneath. "Ms. Ashford Hunt," Mitchell began, "please tell the court about your concerns regarding your mother." Madison's voice was steady, practiced. "I love my mother. She's all I have left since my father died. But over the past 2 years, I've watched her decline, and it's breaking my heart. She forgets conversations we've had. She can't keep track of her bills. I've found unpaid notices in her mail. She becomes confused about appointments. Last week, she told me she was going to the dentist, but when I checked, there was no appointment." Judge Callahan looked at me briefly. I kept my expression neutral. "I've tried to help her," Madison continued, and her voice actually broke slightly. "I've offered to manage her bills, to help her organize her finances. But she refuses. She gets angry with me, accuses me of trying to control her. Your Honor, I'm not trying to control her. I'm trying to save her from losing everything because she can't manage anymore." "Can you give specific examples of her financial mismanagement?" Mitchell asked. "She has bills going to collections. She's made strange investment decisions, talking about giving money to charities she's never supported before. She mentioned something about changing her will, but couldn't explain why or what changes she wanted to make." Madison leaned forward. "Your Honor, my mother has $2.3 million in assets. She owns a historic home in Hawthorne, investment accounts, rental property. If she continues making irrational decisions, she could lose it all. I'm asking this court to protect her from herself. It was a performance, a beautiful, heartbreaking performance. If I hadn't known the truth, if I hadn't found those forged checks, seen my signature practiced over and over, I might have believed her myself. Patricia stood. Ms. Ashford Hunt, you mentioned your mother making strange investment decisions. Did she discuss these decisions with her financial advisor? Madison hesitated. I don't know. Did you ask her financial advisor whether these decisions were sound? No, but... So you don't actually know whether they were irrational or not. You just didn't like them. I know my mother. These weren't normal. You also mentioned unpaid bills. Do you have evidence of bills going to collections? I saw notices. Do you have copies of these notices? No, but I saw them. So we have no documentation of actual financial mismanagement. What we have is your subjective opinion that your mother is making decisions you disagree with. Is that accurate? Madison's jaw tightened. I'm her daughter. I know when something is wrong. Patricia paused, then asked quietly, Ms. Ashford Hunt, 3 years ago, did you practice forging your mother's signature? The courtroom went completely silent. Madison's face drained of color. What? No, I don't. Did you write Claire Ashford over and over on a notepad, practicing to replicate her handwriting? That's ridiculous. Did you write checks from your mother's account without her authorization? Mitchell jumped up. Objection! Your Honor, this is completely unfounded. Your Honor, Patricia said calmly, we have evidence of both. Photographs of the notepad in question, and copies of forged checks found in Ms. Ashford Hunt's possession. If necessary, we can call a handwriting analyst. Judge Callahan's expression had changed. He leaned forward slightly. Mr. Barnes, did you know about these allegations when you filed this petition? Mitchell looked genuinely shocked. No, Your Honor. This is the first I'm hearing. Ms. Ashford Hunt, the judge said directly. Did you forge your mother's signature? Madison's hands were shaking. Her carefully constructed composure was cracking. It wasn't like that. I needed to help her pay bills because she was forgetting... Did you have her authorization? She wasn't capable of giving authorization. That's the whole point. So you took it upon yourself to sign her name to checks and make financial decisions without her knowledge or consent. Judge Callahan's voice was flat, disappointed. That's called forgery, Ms. Ashford Hunt, and potentially elder financial abuse. I was trying to help her. Madison's voice rose, desperate now. She needed help, and she wouldn't accept it, so I had to. You had to steal from her. Patricia's voice cut through. You had to practice forging her signature so you could access her money without permission? It's her money. It'll be mine anyway when she dies. Madison's face was flushed now, angry tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm her only child. I'm entitled to... And there it was. The truth, finally spoken aloud. Not love, not concern. Entitlement. The belief that my money was already hers, that I was just inconveniently still alive and in possession of it. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Even Mitchell had gone pale, realizing that his case had just exploded in his face. Madison seemed to realize what she'd said, her hand flying to her mouth, but it was too late. The words hung in the air like smoke. Judge Callahan sat back in his chair. Ms. Ashford Hunt, you're excused. Please return to your seat. Madison stumbled back to the petitioner's table, still crying. Derek reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I watched her collapse into her chair and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just a deep, hollow sadness. Ms. Moreno, Judge Callahan said, does your client wish to testify? Patricia looked at me. We'd discussed this. I could testify, could tell my side of the story. But we'd decided it might be more powerful if I didn't. If I just let the documents speak for themselves. Your Honor, Patricia said. Mrs. Ashford does not wish to testify at this time. However, we'd like to submit several items into evidence. She approached the bench with our folder. First, comprehensive neuropsychological testing conducted by Dr. Sarah Lindstrom 3 years ago, showing Mrs. Ashford to be cognitively sound with no signs of dementia or impairment. Second, statements from Mrs. Ashford's financial advisor, Mr. Tom Chen, attesting to her financial competence and explaining that her recent decisions, including charitable donations, were carefully considered and appropriate. Third, medical records from Mrs. Ashford's primary care physician confirming her overall good health and mental acuity. Judge Callahan reviewed the documents, taking his time. The courtroom was so quiet, I could hear the clock on the wall ticking. And finally, Your Honor, Patricia said, I'd like to submit the trust agreement executed by Mrs. Ashford 3 years ago. This was it. The moment everything changed, I watched Madison's lawyer lean forward, confused. Madison herself had stopped crying, was watching with a kind of numb attention. Judge Callahan opened the trust document and began to read. His eyebrows rose slightly. After a moment, he looked up at Patricia. Ms. Moreno, am I reading this correctly? Mrs. Ashford transferred all of her assets into an irrevocable charitable trust 3 years ago. Yes, Your Honor. The St. Vincent de Paul Charitable Trust. Mrs. Ashford retained a lifetime estate in her primary residence, but all property, investments, and financial assets now belong to the trust. Upon her death, everything transfers to St. Vincent de Paul Society and Portland Rescue Mission. The silence that followed was absolute. I watched understanding dawn on Madison's face. First confusion, then disbelief, then a kind of horror. Your Honor, Mitchell finally said, his voice strangled. May I see that document? Judge Callahan handed it to the bailiff who brought it to Mitchell. I watched him read it, his face growing paler with each paragraph. He turned to Madison, showed her the papers. She grabbed them from his hands, scanning frantically, shaking her head. No, she whispered. No, this can't. Mom, what did you do? I met her eyes across the courtroom and said nothing. Let the documents speak. Let the truth stand on its own. Your Honor, Patricia said. As you can see, there are no assets to conserve. Mrs. Ashford is of sound mind, as our evidence clearly demonstrates. She made a legal and binding decision to ensure her estate would serve charitable purposes after her death. Ms. Ashford Hunt has no legal standing to challenge this, and her petition for conservatorship is without merit. Madison stood up suddenly, papers falling from her hands. You gave it all away. Everything. The house, the accounts, everything. Judge Callahan's gavel came down. Ms. Ashford Hunt, sit down and control yourself. She gave away my inheritance. Madison's voice was shrill now, hysterical. That money was supposed to be mine. I promised nothing, I said quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken in the courtroom, and everyone turned to look at me. I told you I loved you. I told you I'd always take care of you, but I never promised you could have what I built with your father while I was still alive to stop you. Sit down, Miss Ashford Hunt, Judge Callahan repeated, his voice harder. Madison sat, but she was sobbing now, great heaving sobs that shook her shoulders. Derek looked stunned. Mitchell was frantically paging through the trust documents, probably looking for some loophole, some way to contest this. Judge Callahan cleared his throat. Let me make sure I understand the situation. Mrs. Ashford, you transferred your assets 3 years ago, correct? Yes, Your Honor, Patricia answered, after Mrs. Ashford discovered evidence of her daughter's financial misconduct. And you're claiming these transfers were made while of sound mind. We have extensive documentation of her mental competence, Your Honor. Psychological testing, medical records, statements from her financial advisor. Every transfer was reviewed by counsel and executed properly. Judge Callahan nodded slowly. He looked at Madison with something like pity. Then he looked at me with what might have been respect. "This petition is dismissed," he said. "Mrs. Claire Ashford is clearly of sound mind and has made legally binding decisions regarding her property. Ms. Ashford Hunt has no standing to challenge these decisions and no assets to conserve. Furthermore, the allegations of financial misconduct raised during this hearing are deeply troubling. Ms. Ashford Hunt, you should consider yourself fortunate that your mother has chosen not to pursue criminal charges for forgery and elder financial abuse." Madison's head snapped up. "Criminal charges? What you did? Forging signatures, accessing accounts without authorization. Those are crimes. Your mother would be well within her rights to report you to law enforcement." He paused. "Mrs. Ashford, do you wish to file charges?" Every eye in the courtroom was on me. Madison was staring at me with her mascara running, her perfect composure destroyed, her face raw with betrayal and shock. This was the moment I could finish it, could make her pay for what she'd done. "No, Your Honor," I said quietly. "I don't wish to file charges." Madison let out a sob. Relief or despair, I couldn't tell. "Then this court is adjourned." The gavel came down with a final decisive crack. Patricia touched my arm gently. "Let's go, Claire." But I sat there for a moment longer, watching Madison cry into her hands while Derek awkwardly patted her shoulder and Mitchell packed his briefcase with fumbling hands. Our eyes met one last time across the courtroom, and I saw everything there. Her rage, her disbelief, her sense of complete betrayal. She thought I had betrayed her. She actually believed that giving away my own money to charity, instead of letting her steal it, was a betrayal. I stood up, gathered my folder, and walked toward the courtroom doors. Behind me, I heard Madison's voice, choked with tears. Mom, wait, please." But I didn't turn around. I pushed through the doors and into the hallway, where the sounds of the courthouse rushed back. Voices, footsteps, the hum of fluorescent lights. Patricia walked beside me, silent and supportive. We were halfway to the elevator when I heard running footsteps. "Mom, please." I stopped. Against my better judgment, against Patricia's warning hand on my arm, I stopped and turned. Madison stumbled to a halt a few feet away, her face blotchy and wet. "How could you?" she whispered. "How could you do this to me? How could I do this to you?" The question hung between us. "Madison, you tried to have me declared incompetent so you could steal my money. You forged my signature. You lied to a judge, and you're asking how I could do this to you. It's not stealing if it's going to be mine anyway. But it's not going to be yours. It was never going to be yours. It was mine, and I chose what to do with it. I'm your daughter, and that should have meant something." My voice broke slightly. "That should have meant you loved me more than my bank account." Madison's face crumpled. She actually dropped to her knees right there in the courthouse hallway, people passing by and staring. "Please, Mom, please don't do this. We can fix this. I'll get help. There's nothing to fix, Madison. It's done." I turned away from her, from my daughter on her knees, in a public hallway, begging for money she'd never earned and didn't deserve. Patricia guided me into the elevator, and the last thing I saw before the doors closed was Madison's face, destroyed and disbelieving. In the parking garage, I leaned against Patricia's car and let myself breathe. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. "You did it," Patricia said quietly. "You protected yourself. I destroyed my daughter." "No, she destroyed herself. You just refused to enable it." The drive back to Hawthorne was a blur. Patricia offered to stay with me, but I declined. I needed to be alone, needed to sit in my house and understand what I'd just done and what it meant for the rest of my life. When I unlocked my front door and stepped inside, the house was exactly as I'd left it that morning. The coffee mug in the sink, the book on the table, everything familiar and unchanged. But I was different. I had become someone who could watch her daughter beg and still walk away. I sat in David's chair and stared at nothing for a long time. The afternoon light moved across the floor. The clock ticked. And slowly, very slowly, I felt something settle in my chest. Not peace, exactly, but acceptance. I had done what I needed to do. I had saved myself. And now I would have to live with that choice, with the memory of Madison's face in that courtroom, with the knowledge that I had chosen strangers over my own child. But the strangers didn't try to steal from me. The strangers at Portland Rescue Mission, the families helped by St. Vincent de Paul, they would benefit from David's hard work and my careful planning. And Madison would learn, perhaps for the first time in her life, that there are consequences to cruelty, that you can't treat someone like an ATM and still claim to love them. Outside, it started to rain again. The endless Portland rain, washing the streets clean, feeding the roses in the garden that would bloom again in spring. And I sat in the growing darkness, finally free. The days after the hearing passed in a strange, suspended quiet. I moved through my house like a ghost, going through the motions of living without really feeling present. I made coffee in the mornings. I walked through the neighborhood, past the familiar shops and cafes on Hawthorne. I read books without remembering what they said. At night, I lay in bed and listened to the house creak and settle, and I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. Madison didn't call. I told myself I was relieved, but mostly I was just empty. It was Patricia who called on the third day after the hearing, her voice gentle but professional. "Claire, I wanted to check in. How are you holding up?" "I don't know," I admitted. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee, watching rain streak down the windows. I keep thinking about her face. When the judge said there was nothing to conserve, she looked like I'd killed her. You didn't kill her. You saved yourself. I know, I keep wondering if there was another way. Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Claire, you tried. For 3 years you gave her chances to come clean, to apologize, to choose your relationship over your money. She didn't. She chose to double down. She chose to lie to a judge and try to have you declared incompetent. You didn't create this situation. She did. After we hung up, I sat with those words. She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it in your bones are two different things. And in my bones, I felt like a mother who had failed her child, even though the rational part of my mind understood that Madison had failed herself. The first week passed, then the second. I fell into a routine. Coffee in the morning, a walk through Laurelhurst Park where the trees were beginning to show the first hints of spring, lunch at random cafes where no one knew me, afternoons spent reading or sitting in David's chair, trying to feel his presence. Sometimes I talked to him, out loud, in the empty house. "I don't know if I did the right thing," I told the air one Thursday afternoon. "She was our daughter. We raised her to be better than this. Where did we go wrong?" The house offered no answers, just the familiar creaks and sighs, the rain against the windows, the distant sound of traffic on Hawthorne. It was in the 3rd week that I found the letter. It came in the mail, mixed in with bills and grocery store circulars. A cream-colored envelope with Madison's handwriting on the front. No return address. Just my name, written in the careful script I remembered from her childhood, when she'd made me Mother's Day cards with glitter and construction paper hearts. I stared at that envelope for a long time before I opened it. My hands were shaking. Part of me wanted to throw it away, unopened, to protect myself from whatever poison might be inside. But another part, the part that had carried her for 9 months, that had rocked her through nightmares, that had loved her before she was born, needed to know what she had to say. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten on nice stationery. I sat down at the kitchen table to read it, and I could hear Madison's voice in every word. "Mom, I don't know if you'll even read this. I wouldn't blame you if you threw it away. But I need to try to explain, even though I know there's no explanation that makes what I did okay. You were right about everything. About the forged signatures, about the checks, about why I filed for conservatorship. You were right that I wanted your money, that I felt entitled to it, and you were right to protect yourself from me. I've spent the past 3 weeks trying to understand how I became the person who would do what I did. Derek says I need therapy. He's probably right. He's been sleeping in the guest room since the hearing. I don't blame him. I can barely stand to look at myself. I think it started after Dad died. Not the stealing. That came later. But the feeling that you owed me something. You and Dad always had each other. Even when I was little, I knew I was outside that circle. You two were a unit, and I was just there. Loved, but peripheral. And when Dad died, I thought, maybe finally it would be us, you and me. But you just pulled away. You stopped coming to dinners. You stopped answering my calls. And I felt abandoned all over again. That's not an excuse. I know it's not. But it's the truth. I was angry at you for grieving Dad instead of turning to me. I was angry that you had this house and this money and this life that reminded you of him, while I had nothing but memories and a mother who seemed more interested in ghosts than her living daughter. So I started taking little things at first. $20 here, $40 there, just to see if you'd notice. And when you didn't, I took more. It became a game, almost. How much could I take before you saw me? Before you paid attention? And then I found out about the retirement accounts and the investment properties, and I realized just how much there was. $2.3 million. More money than I'd ever have in my life. And it was just sitting there while you lived alone in that big house, hoarding it like some kind of dragon guarding treasure. That's how I justified it. You didn't need it all. You were old. I know you're only 58, but it felt old to me. Felt like you were already halfway to death. Why shouldn't I have some of it now, when I could actually enjoy it? Why should I have to wait for you to die? God, Mom. Writing that out, I see how ugly it is. How ugly I've become. When I filed for conservatorship, I actually believed I was doing the right thing. I convinced myself you were declining, that you needed help, that I was saving you. But the truth is, I was just trying to make it legal, trying to take what I'd been stealing anyway, but with a judge's blessing. I didn't know about the trust. I swear I didn't. When Judge Callahan read that document, when he said you'd given everything away to charity, I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Not just because of the money, though yes, the money hurt, but because I realized you'd known. For 3 years, you'd known what I was doing, and instead of confronting me, instead of giving me a chance to apologize and change, you just quietly moved everything beyond my reach and waited for me to hang myself. That hurt worse than losing the inheritance. The knowledge that you'd been watching me reveal who I really was, and you just let me do it. I'm not writing this to make you feel guilty. You did what you had to do. I'm writing because I need you to know that I understand now. I understand that what I did was unforgivable. I understand that I destroyed our relationship over money I never earned and didn't deserve. I understand that you looked at me in that courtroom and saw a stranger, because I've become one. Derek and I are separating. He says he can't be married to someone who would try to steal from her own mother. He's right. I don't deserve him. I don't deserve you. I don't deserve any of the good things I've had in my life because I've been too busy wanting more to appreciate what I already had. I'm moving out of the house in Lake Oswego. I'm taking a leave from my job. I'm going to try to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be someone who deserves a $2 million inheritance. I don't know if that person will be anyone you'd want to know, but I'm going to try to find her. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not asking for it. I just wanted you to know that you were right to do what you did, and that somewhere under all the greed and entitlement and ugliness, There's still the daughter who loved you, who loves you, who's sorry she couldn't be better than this. I hope the charities do good things with the money. I hope it helps people who actually need it, instead of someone like me who just wanted it. I'm sorry, Mom, for all of it, for the person I became, and for the daughter I stopped being. Madison. I read the letter 3 times, and by the 3rd time, tears were running down my face. Not tears of forgiveness. I wasn't there yet. Might never be there. But tears of grief for the relationship we'd lost, for the daughter I'd raised and the woman she'd become, for all the ways we'd failed each other. She was right that David and I had been a unit. We'd loved Madison fiercely, but we'd loved each other first, and she'd always known it. That wasn't her fault, but it also wasn't mine. You can love your child completely and still have a marriage that's the center of your life. That's not a crime. That's just honest about the order things come in. But I wondered now if I'd pulled away too much after David died. If I'd been so lost in my grief that I'd forgotten Madison was grieving too, losing the father she'd adored. If I'd been so focused on protecting myself from the pain, from the memories, from the empty space where David used to be, that I'd left her alone with her own empty space. None of that excused what she'd done, but maybe it explained some of it. Maybe we'd both been drowning in our own ways, and instead of reaching for each other, we'd each just tried to save ourselves. I folded the letter carefully and put it in the drawer of the kitchen table, next to old shopping lists and take-out menus and birthday cards from years past. Then I poured the cold coffee down the sink, made a fresh cup, and sat in the growing evening light, thinking. The phone rang around 7. I almost didn't answer, but then I saw the name on the caller ID, Vincent de Paul Society. Mrs. Ashford? A woman's voice, warm and professional. This is Rachel Morrison, Director of Operations at St. Vincent de Paul. I'm calling because we received the trust documents from your attorney, and I wanted to reach out personally to thank you for your extraordinary generosity. Oh, I said, surprised. You're welcome. It seemed like the right thing to do. It's going to change so many lives. The funds will allow us to expand our food pantry program, provide emergency assistance to families facing eviction, support our addiction recovery services. Mrs. Ashford, you've given people hope who didn't have any before. After we hung up, I sat with those words, hope. I'd been so focused on what I'd taken away from Madison that I hadn't really let myself think about what I'd given to others. Somewhere in Portland right now, there was a family who wouldn't be evicted because of this trust. A person struggling with addiction who'd have access to treatment. Children who wouldn't go to bed hungry. David would have liked that. He'd always been a sucker for hard luck stories, always the first to pull out his wallet when someone needed help. I remembered him volunteering at the food bank every Thanksgiving, coming home tired but satisfied, telling me about the families he'd met. They're just like us, he'd say. They just had worse luck, made worse choices, or started from a worse place. There but for Grace, Claire, Grace again. That word that kept appearing, like a thread running through everything. The next day was Saturday. I woke up early and, on impulse, drove downtown to St. Vincent de Paul's main location. It was in an older building near Burnside, with a food pantry on the ground floor and offices above. I went in without a plan, just wanting to see where the money would go to make it real in my mind. The place was bustling, volunteers sorting donations, clients waiting in plastic chairs, the smell of coffee, and something cooking in a back kitchen. I stood near the entrance, feeling out of place in my nice coat and boots, surrounded by people in worn clothes carrying plastic bags and tired hope on their faces. "Can I help you?" A volunteer approached me, an older man with kind eyes and a St. Vincent de Paul t-shirt. "I'm just looking around," I said inadequately. "First time here? We have an orientation for new volunteers every Tuesday at... Actually, I'm a donor. I recently made a contribution." His face lit up. "Well, thank you. Every bit helps. Let me show you around if you'd like." He walked me through the food pantry, explaining how they served over 300 families a week. Showed me the emergency assistance office where people came when they'd received an eviction notice or their power was being shut off. Introduced me to a woman named Maria, who ran the addiction recovery program, who'd been clean for 5 years and now helped others get sober. "We can't save everyone," the volunteer told me as we stood in the main room, watching people come and go. "But we save who we can, one person at a time, one family at a time. And it's people like you who make that possible." I drove home with a lighter feeling in my chest. This was good. This was right. David would have approved. And maybe someday, Madison would understand that I hadn't taken her inheritance out of spite. I'd given it to people who needed it more. And in doing so, I'd given her something more valuable. A lesson about entitlement, about consequences, about the difference between wanting something and deserving it. Spring came slowly to Portland, the way it always does. The roses in my garden started showing new growth, green shoots pushing up through the mulch David had laid down years ago. I pruned them carefully, following the techniques he'd taught me, talking to him while I worked. "I got a letter from Madison," I told the roses. "She's sorry. She's getting help. She and Derek are separating. I don't know how to feel about any of it." The roses didn't answer, but the work was meditative. Cutting away the dead wood, shaping the branches, preparing for new growth. There was a metaphor there, if I wanted to look for it. In April, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to Mass at St. Philip Neri. It was a Sunday morning, cool and clear, and I slipped into a pew in the back, feeling like an imposter among the regulars who knew all the responses and when to sit and stand. But Father Murphy saw me and smiled from the altar, a small acknowledgement that I was welcome here, even after my long absence. The homily was about the prodigal son. Of course it was. Father Murphy talked about the father who welcomed his wayward son home, killed the fatted calf, threw a party, about the older brother who was angry, who felt the father was rewarding bad behavior, about forgiveness and grace and the mathematics of love, which don't work the way we think they should. The father didn't love the prodigal son more than the faithful son, Father Murphy said, his voice carrying through the high-ceilinged church. He loved them equally, but the prodigal son needed the grace more, needed to know he was still loved despite his failures, and the faithful son needed to learn that love isn't a limited resource, that giving grace to one doesn't diminish what's available to the other. I sat in that pew and cried quietly into my hands, because I wasn't sure if I was the father or the prodigal son or the faithful son. Maybe I was all three. Maybe Madison was all three. Maybe we were just two broken people who'd hurt each other in the name of love and self-preservation. After Mass, Father Murphy caught me in the parking lot. "Claire, it's good to see you." "I didn't know where else to go," I admitted. "This is exactly where you should be." He paused. "How are you doing since the hearing?" "I don't know. Lost. Guilty. Relieved. All of it at once." "That sounds about right." He smiled gently. "You know, guilt is only useful if it teaches us something. Otherwise, it's just self-punishment. And God doesn't require that. He already knows you're human. He's not surprised by your limitations. I keep thinking I should have done something different. Found another way. Maybe. Or maybe you did exactly what you needed to do. And now you're learning to live with the consequences of protecting yourself. That's hard for mothers. We're taught to sacrifice, to put everyone else first. But martyrdom isn't the same as love, Claire. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set a boundary and enforce it. I drove home thinking about boundaries and grace and the space between them. That night, I pulled out Madison's letter and read it again. Then I took out paper and a pen, and I wrote back, "Madison, I got your letter. Thank you for writing it. You ask me to understand, and I do. Better than you might think. I understand feeling abandoned and angry and like you deserved something that wasn't being freely given. I understand wanting to be seen, to matter, to be more than peripheral. But understanding isn't the same as excusing. What you did was wrong. You know that now. And I'm glad. I'm glad you're getting help. I'm glad you're trying to figure out who you are without my money as a safety net or a goal. I'm sorry that Dad and I made you feel like you were outside our circle. That wasn't intentional, but intention doesn't negate impact. You deserve to feel centered in your own family. And if we failed at that, I'm sorry. But you also need to understand something. I didn't move the money to punish you. I moved it to protect myself. And yes, I knew what you were doing for 3 years before I acted. But I wasn't watching you hang yourself. I was giving you time to come clean, time to apologize, time to choose our relationship over your greed. You didn't. That was your choice, not mine. I don't know if we can repair what's been broken between us. I don't know if I can trust you again, or if you can forgive me for giving away what you wanted. I don't know what our relationship looks like now, or if we even have one anymore. But I know this. I love you. I've always loved you. Not the person you became when greed took over, but the daughter you were, and might be again. That love doesn't mean I'll give you money or access to my finances or another chance to steal from me. It just means I haven't stopped being your mother, even when you stopped being my daughter. If you want to talk, really talk, not about money or inheritance or what you think you deserve, then call me. If you need time to figure yourself out first, take it. I'll be here, in this house, living my life, alone, but not lonely, sad about what we lost, but not destroyed by it. You said you hope the charities do good things with the money. They will. I've seen it. People are being fed, housed, given second chances at life. Your father would have loved that. Maybe someday you will too. I'm sorry for my part in how we got here. I'm sorry I pulled away after your father died. I'm sorry if you felt unloved or unseen. But I'm not sorry for protecting myself from you. That was necessary. That was survival. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. I hope therapy helps. I hope you become someone you can be proud of. Someone who doesn't measure her worth by her bank account. And I hope someday we can sit down together without money between us, without resentment and anger and this terrible weight of betrayal and disappointment. Just two people who used to love each other, trying to figure out if there's anything left to build on. Until then, I'm praying for you. I know that probably seems hollow, or hypocritical, or like something a mother says when she doesn't know what else to say. But it's true. I pray that you find peace. I pray that you forgive yourself. And I pray that you learn to see value in things that can't be spent, or deposited, or counted. With love. Despite everything, Mom. I addressed the envelope to Madison's Lake Oswego house. I didn't have her new address yet. And took it to the post office the next morning. Dropping it in the mailbox felt like releasing a dove. I'd said what I needed to say. Now it was up to Madison what she did with it. The weeks passed. May arrived, and with it the roses bloomed. Red and pink and white, just like David had planted them. Bursting with color and filling the air with their heavy, sweet scent. I spent hours in the garden, tending them, talking to David, talking to God, talking to myself. Mrs. Patterson came over one afternoon with homemade cookies and an apology. "I'm sorry about the hearing," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Madison told me you were declining, and I believed her. I should have asked you directly." "It's okay," I told her, and I meant it. She was convincing. That's what makes good liars dangerous. Still, you've been a good neighbor to me, especially after Harold died. I should have known better. We sat on my porch and ate cookies and talked about Harold and David and what it's like to be a widow in a house full of memories. It felt good, having a friend again. I'd been so isolated, so focused on protecting myself from Madison, that I'd forgotten there were other people in the world worth knowing. Tom Chen, my financial advisor, called to check in. "How are you doing, Claire?" That couldn't have been easy. "It was necessary," I said. "That doesn't make it easy. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing, and the charities are already putting the money to good use. You should be proud. Proud." I wasn't sure about that, but I was at peace, which was something. One evening in mid-May, I was reading on the porch when a car pulled up. Not Madison's Lexus. She'd probably sold that, given the separation and the money troubles. This was an older Honda, practical and unremarkable. The driver's door opened and Madison got out. She looked different. Thinner, tired. Her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail instead of her usual sleek style. She wore jeans and a plain t-shirt, clothes I'd never seen her in before. She looked younger somehow, stripped of her armor of designer labels and perfect makeup. She stood by the car for a moment, gathering courage. Then she walked up the path to my porch, stopping at the bottom of the steps. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, honey." We looked at each other across that small distance that felt like an ocean. "I got your letter," she said. "It took me a while to respond. I wasn't sure what to say." "That's okay. Can we talk? Just talk, I mean. Not about money or the trust or any of that. Just talk." I gestured to the empty chair beside me. "Sit." She climbed the steps slowly and sat, perching on the edge of the chair like she might need to run at any moment. For a while, we just sat in silence, listening to the neighborhood sounds. Kids playing down the street, a dog barking, the distant hum of traffic on Hawthorne. "The house looks nice," Madison finally said. "The roses are beautiful this year. Your father planted them well. They come back every year, no matter how badly I neglect them. That sounds like Dad, always building things that lasted." More silence. It wasn't uncomfortable exactly, but it was weighted with all the things we weren't saying. "I'm living in a studio apartment in Beaverton," Madison said abruptly. "Derek and I are divorced now. It was fast. We didn't have kids, didn't have much to fight over. He was kind about it. Kinder than I deserved. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's my fault." She twisted her hands in her lap. "I'm working at a coffee shop. Starbucks, actually. It's humbling, making minimum wage at 31 when I used to make 6 figures. But it's honest work, and nobody there knows who I am or what I did." "Are you still in therapy?" "Twice a week. Dr. Hernandez says I have issues with entitlement and delayed gratification. Also some stuff about self-worth and external validation. Basically, I'm a mess." She laughed, but it was a sad sound. "I'm trying, though, to be better, to understand why I became that person. I'm glad you're getting help. Mom." She turned to look at me, and I saw tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I know I said it in the letter, but I need to say it to your face. I'm sorry for trying to steal from you. I'm sorry for the conservatorship. I'm sorry for every lie I told, and every time I made you doubt yourself. I'm sorry for being the kind of daughter who would do that to her mother." The tears were running down her face now, and I felt my own eyes fill. "I know you are. Do you think you can ever forgive me?" I thought about Father Murphy's homily, about the prodigal son and the father who welcomed him home, about grace and boundaries and the mathematics of love. "I'm working on it," I said honestly. "It's going to take time, Madison. You hurt me deeply. You betrayed my trust in a fundamental way. That doesn't just go away because you're sorry. I know. I don't expect. I'm not asking you to trust me again. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, and I'm trying to make amends. Not with you necessarily, but with myself, with who I want to be." We sat there as the sun set behind the houses across the street, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The roses perfumed the air. A cool breeze picked up, promising rain later. Your father and I did make you feel peripheral sometimes, I said quietly. That wasn't fair to you. You deserved to feel like the center of our world, at least when you were young. I'm sorry for that. You loved each other. That's not a crime. No, but we could have been more mindful of including you. We got lost in each other sometimes and forgot you needed us too. Maybe. But Mom, that doesn't excuse what I did. I've been trying to blame you, blame Dad, blame being an only child or feeling left out or whatever. But the truth is, I made bad choices. I chose greed over love. That's on me, not you. I reached over and took her hand. It was the first time we'd touched since before the hearing, and I felt her fingers squeeze mine, holding on tight like she was afraid I'd let go. I gave the money away because I had to protect myself, I said, but also because I hoped it would teach you something. That some things matter more than money. That you can't steal your way to a relationship or buy your way to worthiness. Did it work? Did I learn? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something different than the polished, entitled woman who'd stood in that courtroom and laughed. This Madison looked humbled. Broken, maybe. But broken things can be repaired if the person doing the repair is honest about where the cracks are. I think you're learning, I said. That's enough for now. We talked until dark, about nothing important and everything that mattered. About Derek and the divorce, about her therapy, about the coffee shop job and her studio apartment, about the garden and Mrs. Patterson and the charities receiving the trust money. We didn't talk about the future or what our relationship might look like. We just talked. Two women who used to be mother and daughter, trying to figure out if they could be again. When she left, she hugged me on the porch. It was awkward at first, both of us unsure. But then she buried her face in my shoulder and cried, and I held her like I used to when she was small and the world hurt too much. Can I come back? She asked. Not for money or anything, just to talk sometimes? Yes, I said. You can come back. I watched her drive away in her practical Honda, and I stood on the porch for a long time after, breathing in the scent of roses and feeling something unfurl in my chest. Not forgiveness yet, not trust, but possibility. The possibility that something new might grow from the ruins of what we'd destroyed. Inside, the house welcomed me with its familiar creaks and sighs. I made tea and sat in David's chair, and I thought about prodigal daughters and grace and the long road back from betrayal. I don't know if we'll make it, I told David's ghost. I don't know if we can rebuild what she broke, but I think we might try. Is that foolish? The house offered no answer, but I felt something like approval in the settling silence. David had always believed in second chances, always believed that people could change if they wanted it badly enough. I pulled out a journal I'd started keeping, something Dr. Hernandez had suggested when Madison mentioned I might benefit from therapy too. You've been through trauma, she'd said when I'd called to set up an appointment. Financial abuse from a family member is a violation. You need to process that. So I'd started processing, writing about the hurt and anger and fear, writing about the moment I'd found that notepad, writing about sitting in the courtroom and watching my daughter destroy herself, writing about the roses blooming and Mrs. Patterson's cookies and the volunteers at St. Vincent de Paul. Tonight I wrote, Madison came today. We talked. I don't know what happens next, but I think I'm ready to find out. Not because I owe her anything, but because I owe myself the chance to see if grace is possible, if rebuilding is possible, if love can survive betrayal and come out different but still real. I wrote until my hand cramped, pouring everything onto the page. Then I made myself dinner, pasta with vegetables from the farmer's market, and ate it slowly, tasting each bite, grateful for simple things. Food, shelter, safety, the smell of roses through the open window, the sound of rain beginning to fall. These were the things that mattered, not the $2 million I'd given away, Not the house or the investments or any of it. Just being alive, being safe, being free from the fear that someone I loved was stealing from me. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in months. No nightmares, no waking at 3 a.m. with my heart racing. Just deep, peaceful sleep, the sleep of someone who's fought a hard battle and survived. The next morning, I woke to sunlight and birdsong. I made coffee and took it out to the garden, where the roses were in full bloom, their petals soft and perfect. Red for passion, pink for gratitude, white for remembrance. I touched each one gently, thanking David for planting them, thanking God for letting them grow, thanking myself for having the courage to protect them from someone who would have sold this house and paved over this garden without a second thought. Thank you, I whispered to the morning air, for showing me I'm stronger than I thought, for teaching me that love sometimes looks like boundaries, for giving me a second chance at life, even if it cost me everything I thought I wanted. The roses nodded in the breeze, holding their color, holding their beauty, holding proof that things planted with care and intention will bloom again, year after year, no matter how harsh the winter. And I stood in my garden, in my home, in my life that I'd saved from someone who wanted to take it from me, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt free, not happy, exactly, not healed, but free, free from fear, from enabling, from the exhausting work of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't, free to build whatever came next, whether that included Madison or not. The sound of my footsteps leaving that courtroom 3 months ago had been the sound of a door closing. But standing here in the morning light with roses blooming around me, I heard something else, something softer but just as important. The sound of a door opening, the sound of possibility, the sound of empty hands that were finally ready to reach for something new, something real, something earned instead of stolen. I went inside and called Rachel at St. Vincent de Paul. "I'd like to volunteer," I told her. "Nothing major. Maybe helping in the food pantry once a week. We'd love to have you, Claire. When can you start?" "Today," I said. "I can start today, because that's what grace looks like," I was learning. Not erasing the past or pretending it didn't happen, but choosing to build something new from the ruins. Choosing to help others because you know what it's like to be hurt. Choosing to open your hands and let the bitterness fall out so there's room for something better. I spent that afternoon at St. Vincent de Paul, sorting donations and handing out food boxes, and listening to stories from people whose lives had been saved by the very money my daughter had wanted to steal. And I felt David's presence in the work, felt him smiling at this choice, this path forward. That night, Madison sent a text. "Thank you for letting me come over." It meant everything. "Can we do it again next week?" I looked at that message for a long time before responding. "Yes, Wednesday at 7. I'll make dinner. I'd like that. I love you, Mom." I stared at those 3 words. "I love you, Mom," and felt the complicated tangle of emotions they brought up. Love and hurt and hope and caution, all mixed together. Finally, I wrote back, "I love you too. We'll figure out what that means now. Together." And I meant it. We would figure it out. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be fast. There would be setbacks and hard conversations and moments when I'd wonder if I was making a mistake by opening the door even this much. But grace, I was learning, isn't about easy. It's about choosing to try even when you're scared. It's about setting boundaries while keeping your heart open. It's about believing that people can change while staying vigilant about whether they actually do. I set my phone down and looked around my house, this Victorian on Hawthorne that held 30 years of memories, of life, of love. It would go to charity when I died. Madison would inherit nothing but whatever relationship we managed to build from here. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Maybe teaching her that love matters more than money, that character matters more than inheritance, that doing the right thing matters even when it costs you everything. Maybe that would be the greatest gift I could give her. Not $2 million, but a second chance at becoming someone worth knowing. I walked through my house one more time before bed, touching familiar things, saying silent thank yous. To David for building this life with me, to the house for holding us, to the roses for blooming every spring despite everything, to God for the strength to protect myself and the grace to try again, and to myself for surviving, for doing the hard thing, for walking out of that courtroom with my dignity intact and my conscience clear. The sound of empty hands, I'd learned, wasn't a sound of loss. It was the sound of freedom, the sound of letting go of what was killing you so you could reach for what might save you. And as I turned off the lights and climbed the stairs to bed, I carried that sound with me, the quiet echo of my own footsteps, walking forward into whatever came next, alone but not lonely, hurt but not broken, ready for tomorrow even though yesterday had tried to destroy me. The Victorian settled around me with its familiar creaks. Outside, Portland slept under clearing skies, and I lay in the darkness, finally at peace with the woman I'd become. Someone who could watch her daughter beg and still walk away. Someone who could give away millions to strangers because they needed it more. Someone who understood that the hardest act of love is sometimes saying no. Someone who had learned, finally, that the sound of empty hands is really the sound of a life reclaimed. My daughter laughed in front of the judge, thinking she would receive the entire inheritance, claiming I was senile. I just stayed silent. But when the judge said, "She's perfectly well, but she doesn't even have assets in her name," it left my daughter on her knees.